Just recently, the NFL just announced their new team, the Seattle Raiders.
Or is it the Las Vegas Seahawks?
The NFL is undetermined by that one. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Josiah Damas.
And I'm Will.
We're finally back. Took us a little bit of time. We've been busy is an understatement. At least I have been very busy. I assume you've been very busy.
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of, yeah. I've been kind of all over the place. So college is not easy when you're about to be done.
No, it's been a time, but we got quite a bit of news that's been coming out. So
Sweet, juicy news, too.
yeah. Well, this obviously will be starting with the some of the trade news. Next video will be
Free agency.
some of that sweet free agency kickoff. But yeah, we'll look at some of the rumors and some of the trades that have been happening. And I think a really good spot to start. I mean, we could kick it off with like the first one that really happened, which being like the Debo trade. Nothing too grand.
Nothing.
Being traded to the Commanders for a 5th-round pick. I mean, for Commanders, it's kind of safe. Maybe you could. Well, no, I feel like
you had a veteran presence in the locker room a little bit, but I don't know. I feel like what they're going to get out of that one is at least a reliable receiver in the sense of like they can lean on him in certain situations, but they're not going to get like as much as the Niners got out of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's where it's like the value is fair. As you think 5th, and it's like, well, based off of last year, it should be 6th or 7th, but based off of what he could be, you could argue he could be worth more. And I think 5th kind of is in the middle. I think the 49ers would have wanted more out of him, but obviously because of how he played, you're kind of stuck with a 5th. And Commanders, again, it's not that much. If it was like a 6th or a 7th, you would feel a lot better. But a 5th round,
I feel fairly reasonable.
With what he could be, if he's not as bad as he was last year, with what he could be, that could be really good. And obviously, they've made some other moves as well. So when you package together what the Commanders have done, it's kind of been good. Honestly, we can jump right into that. Just recently, the Commanders traded for left tackle Laramie Tunsil, and this one is interesting to me because, and I say interesting. I'll say interesting because Laramie Tunsil is probably the only like great offensive lineman they had on that line. The Texans' need was linemen, and they got rid of the one guy
who was actually kind of decent at his job.
Yeah, was actually really good. He has some concerns with like penalties and stuff, but I mean, when you look at what they got for him, it was a 3rd this year, a 2nd, 4th next year. Well, it's basically how it works is a 3rd this year, a 2nd next year, and then they swapped 4ths for next year.
Oh, okay, that's not terrible.
So.
But straw might die.
Yeah,
we might have a funeral next year.
I don't know what the Texans do here.
That might be like a draft question.
Well, I think it absolutely is. But what, do you only draft linemen? Because you have a pretty talented roster, but you have no line, and that's what I think cost them so much this year. So they're in a really poor spot. The Commanders, on the other hand, now you look at this. They've added Debo and they've added Laramie Tunsil, and they traded for Marshawn Lattimore earlier in the year.
This is true.
They're making some moves this year. Like I think halfway through the year they realized that this is a team that can go to the Super Bowl soon.
Yeah,
and
really fast too.
Now you go. I mean, Jaden Daniel. They had the issue. I mean, coming into this last year of O-line.
Yes, that was their big question mark. Just seeing if Jaden Daniels would suffer the same fate as previous Commanders quarterbacks.
Sam Howell. But they go out and get Jaden Daniels. He helps because of his mobility. Now you get him a very good left tackle. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, with potentially Debo playing up to his potential,
yeah,
this could be a really scary team.
Yeah.
But speaking of O-line help, have you seen what the Bears have been doing?
Yeah, what now they're committed to saving Caleb Williams.
Oh, I mean, that's logical. I mean,
it took them a while, but they finally got the ball rolling on that one.
They set a franchise record for most sacks allowed in a season.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. But as far as trades go, half of it has been through trades, half of it has been through free agency, and we'll cover that in free agency. But the trades, not too bad. Jonah Jackson for a sixth from from the Rams. You give up a sixth if you're the Bears. That's pretty good. He's an interior guy. He's not like super splashy, but it's a starting caliber O-lineman. And when it was as bad as it was,
you kind of need anything at that point.
But the one that I thought was really surprising to see, and maybe I'm a little bit out of date on this guy, but they also traded a 2026 fourth, so not even this year fourth,
but
for
2 years. No, never mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, next year. For Joe Thuney, who I thought was a pretty good interior offensive lineman. He's not Creed Humphrey, but he's
something.
As far as the Chiefs go, if I recall correctly, he's been a very good interior lineman. So,
yeah, he's been pretty solid for them. I'd say all that lineman, I think he's definitely. I don't know if some people would consider the top of the lineman that they had, but he's definitely really good.
For the Chiefs, I would say he was pretty good. And for the Bears, I think these two additions are really key. It'll help with whatever their run game looks like if they stick with Swift or if they go a different direction. There've been some talks about them getting Gentry in the draft, but that's for another time. But as far as like the moves they've been making, them and the Commanders have been very interesting. But these are, for the Bears, I think they're not flashy. You did the flashy stuff last year. Did not work. You make like the key moves now. You get two guys in the trenches. And I think I like what they have done so far. I mean, last year after all the flashy moves, I was like, I don't like what they're doing. I like what they're doing.
Now you're like,
I like what they're doing now. Especially now that you have a new head coach who can actually maybe do something. But moving on, as far as like other trades that have happened before we get into hypotheticals, one that wasn't of much note, the Jaguars were going to release Christian Kirk and then traded them to the Texans. Interesting move for a 7th-round pick.
Yeah.
Next year.
That's
like about as little as you can get for somebody.
Yeah. That's about nothing.
It just shows that they had like no leverage in that trade, which makes sense because they had announced they were going to release him and then they trade him. But you trade him to the Texans, I don't know, for pretty much nothing. And he's not like an amazing receiver, but he is still very good, reliable, serviceable.
Yes.
And you just traded him to your rival. Interesting. I don't know.
I'm not a Jaguars fan or a Texans fan. I can't speak for them.
But then we got. I'll do the one other small one before we get to the two big ones, and ones that you're definitely going to have some opinions on. The Patriots, they sent interior D lineman Devon Godshaw to the Saints for a next year 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing too major. I'm honestly curious why they did, because Patriots aren't even like in need of clearing cap because they have 121 million free.
They've got a lot of cap.
They are the wealthiest of any team. So interesting. And then maybe it's the Saints trying to. I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but you want to get into the Seahawks here and the move. Which one do you want to start with? Because
I feel like
here's what I will say. The capital that they've gone back, maybe not individually as good, but they did add between the two trades a second and a third, which isn't too bad.
No, it's not. But
for a team that apparently, I think the way you have to look at it is they're kind of looking at rebuilding.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of assuming for what this has been kind of pushing towards. I don't know, because when you trade that kind of a caliber of a wide receiver to I don't know, a Steelers team like that, I don't know.
I can say that I'm not excited.
I know you're not excited, but like, you got 2 crash outs in the same wide receiver room. How are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, it's interesting with the way they've kind of cleared house as far as the passing game goes.
Mm-hmm.
For clarification, what those moves were: Seahawks, they traded DK Metcalf to the Steelers for a second-round pick, and then they flipped a 6th and a 7th. This DK Metcalf trade came down to money. I think, honestly, both of these came down to money.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf definitely came down to money because it instantly signed a 5-year, $150 million deal.
Yeah.
As a sizable contract, the guy wanted to get paid, and Seahawks just didn't seem prepared to pay him. So you lose your number 1 receiver. You also lose your what had been a very long time receiver for them, Tyler Lockett, as they release him.
Yeah.
So now you have just JSN. And then on top of that, you trade Geno Smith to the Raiders for a 3rd. And we'll get into it. There's news as far as free agency goes, but I think it's clear that they're trying to move on from what they had. Yeah. And kind of prepare for more of a future. I mean, you have a new young head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this last year kind of proved that this was not the team they were going to be building around. You have that 2nd and 3rd. You add that to what they already have. The Raiders one especially, and the Steelers 2nd is it's a later 2nd. If it was an early 2nd for DK, I think it would be a lot better. But the 3rd for Geno, I think, is pretty solid.
Yeah, especially what you're getting out of Geno Smith right now. Because Geno Smith is not, in my opinion, your true starter quarterback. Like, he's good enough to start a few games, but he's not
he's your veteran and or bridge quarterback.
He's not anything long term.
I've been saying for a few years that I think Geno is kind of he's just there. He's a serviceable quarterback, but he's not the long term solution.
He's a journeyman.
And so I think it's finally they finally got to the point where it's time for the new regime. And with where they're sitting in the draft, it's kind of in the middle. There's a lot of quarterbacks though that are further down the board, so they can pick up guys later. But it's an interesting situation for the Seahawks. I think at first people were very confused about what they were doing. I think now that they've made all these moves, it's kind of a little more clear that they're not expecting to be great this next year. It seems more like a rebuild.
Yeah, because the Metcalf trade was the first one, right?
Yeah, that one happened first.
That one was a big shock to everybody else, and I was like, what are we doing? And then Geno Smith got signed or traded, and then other pieces started to fall out of place for the Seahawks. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing now.
Yeah, so it's it'll be interesting. Honestly, the receiver room is gonna be their O-line isn't great. Their receiver room is now just pretty much JSN. I mean, I think if I recall correctly, they still have Jake Bobo, but they have a few pieces, but nobody huge. So it's gonna be interesting who's throwing. Well, we know who's throwing.
Well, yeah, we know who's throwing it out.
But who's throwing too, other than JSN? I mean,
I don't know. Beats me.
You're kind of hoping. I don't know. Maybe JSN can be what Justin Jefferson before they got Addison. What? Just a one-man wrecking crew. I don't know. So that'll be interesting. But now's where we get into the stuff that hasn't happened, and rumors and such. Now I want to start with Devontae Adams. obviously he didn't get traded. He was going to be traded, but could not find anything, so the Jets released him, so he became a free agent. But people who are available for trade,
quite a few.
Cooper Kupp, I think, is an interesting one.
Yeah. I am going to assume that the Rams might figure something out now they have Devontae Adams in the mix. I don't know if they... I can see it going either way, but I think with how much Cooper Kupp has meant to the Rams and how successful they've been with Cooper Kupp, it doesn't hurt to keep him around for a little bit longer. Maybe not for like long term, but like maybe a couple more years or something like that. I don't know. Cooper Kupp hasn't like regressed quite yet. Like he's still good, but he's not like...
I mean, he took a step back this year. Yeah. I think with the addition of Adams, though, I think he definitely gets moved. Because I don't think there's going to be room for him anymore, which is, it sucks to say because obviously, like you mentioned, you've always wanted him to stay a Ram.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp is... But
I think he gets moved. I think potentially he could get moved to somewhere like the Patriots. I feel like...
Well, yeah, we'll see.
I feel like that just, in my eyes, that just fits. Because it's like they're young quarterback. They don't really have the receivers you'd want. And you throw in a veteran presence like that, you can probably get them for a little bit less.
Maybe.
I mean, I think they're in a good spot. Mm-hmm. The Rams are in a good spot, and they don't really feel like they need him, and I think that's why they can move on from him, is they kind of want to work away from him. Again, Devontae, he can do a lot more. Cooper's he's really good in the slot. He's got that like shiftiness, but I don't think he's going to be the long-term solution. He's going to be great somewhere where a team's looking for a veteran presence who doesn't have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be the Patriots either, because like the Raiders need some weapons.
Raiders could definitely use something.
I'm trying to think of other places. I mean, we just mentioned the Seahawks. Who are they going to throw to?
Yeah, I mean, the Seahawks, if you do a short-term deal, you could do something there. Again, they're not really going for much, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, like there's a lot that they could work with, because there's a few teams who need some weapons. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's also the Saints as well. I mean, not that they don't have any weapons, it's just the addition of Cooper Kupp to the Saints could be a good addition. We'll just see what they do there. Yeah. It also depends if the Saints are actually going to do anything in the offseason.
It seems like it's largely rebuilding teams just as a veteran presence.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's what you named: Raiders, Saints, Patriots. Those are all teams in the Seahawks, all in the process of rebuilding, who don't have, as far as receivers go, kind of a lackluster receiver room. And he's going to go in there, provide veteran presence.
Yeah.
And again, he could go pretty much anywhere. I mean, you could put him on someone like the Bears, but I don't. There's a lot of places he could go. I think he's not going to be anything too flashy, though, of a trade. We could talk about maybe the biggest disappointment was what could have been the flashiest trade, which just ended up as a re-signing, being Myles Garrett, who right after Max Crosby just re-sign or gets an extension to become the highest paid non-quarterback.
Then there goes Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett goes, listen, money. Yeah, so that was really disappointing, though, because I would have loved to see him move, but he doesn't. He stays with the Browns. So disappointing. I also don't think that helps the Browns whatsoever.
No.
So
they needed to move on from him.
They needed a rebuild and the money they spent on him. They've restructured Deshaun Watson a second time. I think they're at the second or third.
They're at the second time, I think.
So they're trying to move around that cap, but they're just not in a good spot. So Browns, but let's see, other guys who are on the block or rumored to be traded. Trey Hendrickson.
He's been a big name that's been kind of thrown around. The Bengals have done nothing. what have they done?
They franchise
tagged T.
Higgins.
Higgins. They haven't done with anything with Jamar Chase.
And Sam Hubbard retired.
Sam Hubbard retires.
So they lost a guy wants out, and you haven't extended your key piece, and your other receiver who has been a talking point, you franchise tag for the second straight year.
Yep.
So which also again is another talking point, because there's a thing that a lot of teams do where they will franchise tag someone and trade them. Because it's an easy way. You can't trade someone if they're not under contract. So they can do this and potentially take the offseason to move him, and then another team could, work out a contract with him. Or they will play another year with him on his franchise tag. I don't know if that's the best. I don't think that's the move.
It's probably not the move, but it is a move. I don't know what the Bengals are doing right now. There's a lot of things that they should have been doing since, I don't know, or early February. I don't know. They've just been kicking the can down the road, and they've just not been signing anybody. They haven't been trading anybody. They've just been letting people walk.
Yeah, you got that now. So it's like they let Hendrickson, or they grant permission for Hendrickson to seek a trade while you tag T. Higgins. And yes, T. Higgins is good, and he did a lot. But Trey Hendrickson was the sack leader this year.
Yeah.
And you're letting him be the one to leave when you're losing Sam Hubbard and already needed edge help. And now you're losing the one
piece that
the one good one you had left. I think the Bengals are in trouble, but I think
they're going to regress this year.
I don't know, where do you think potential landing spots? I've seen everybody pretty much predicted to go to either the Eagles or the Lions.
Oh, for
at edge.
I can see Hendrickson going to either. I see more Lions than I do Eagles right now, mostly because the Eagles are more concerned about keeping what they already have, there, because they already lost a couple other players to free agency, which we're going to talk about later.
Some guys did walk, but they could use an edge.
They could, but they already have a great front. I'm not entirely concerned about the Eagles. I think they just keep the pieces that they already have. I mean, if they want to sign him, they probably could if, they could broker a deal there. But there's not – I can see the Lions because the Lions need help there. They've always needed somebody to be, duoing with Hutchinson. So we'll see what they do there.
He would be interesting opposite of him. Another team that has been rumored – I mean, who's – more rumored, I think, with Myles Garrett.
Yes.
Which I would have loved to see would have been Myles Garrett to the Commanders, but now Trey Hendrickson potentially could fill that to the Commanders. There are a few teams that need him, need an edge. There's the Packers. They've been looking for an edge.
Packers have been have they been doing anything?
Trade-wise, they actually do have a rumor going on there with Jair Alexander.
That's true.
Potentially being moved. But the move for Trey Hendrickson, he potentially could go, or a rumor has been traded to the Packers. Another team that's popped up is potentially the Chargers. Chargers did re-sign Khalil Mack, but they cut Joey Bosa. So
they did. So maybe they get him to replace Joey Bosa then?
Especially with Khalil Mack coming back only on a 1-year deal. So
yeah, they probably need somebody to do long
Hendrickson,
term.
I honestly...
I feel like the Chargers.
Yeah, I feel like the Chargers would be a really fun spot for him, especially to kind of take over for Khalil Mack after he leaves, and then you just kind of sign or maybe draft someone in a year or two to kind of be that opposite. But I don't hate him going to the Chargers. I think Harbaugh would have a great time with him.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think that's just how it is. Would be great, but
I'm curious to see what happens because I think the Chargers would be the best fit, but it also depends on which team can jump on him first.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is Bengals are going to probably seek best compensation.
Compensation is definitely a big thing, especially if they need pieces on the defensive end. So
yeah, so because they got a lot of stuff to do, but. We talked Bengals, so we can talk T. Higgins. do you think he gets moved? And if so, where, or do you think they're going to stick with him there for another year?
This one's like, I can see both sides, but I could definitely see him being moved, mostly because there's just a lot of need for that specifically, especially with a lot of teams. Obviously, it's going to be highest bidder for sure. The teams that I think could use him well, I'd say the Chargers and the Commanders, but there are some teams that could probably jump the gun on that and pay him more money. So we'll see what he wants. Bengals, knowing how they've been doing this offseason, they're probably not going to keep him.
Yeah, that'd be curious because, again, the rumor or the interesting thing, I feel like the Bengals type move is going to be to keep him because there's so much on the offense. They've had so many opportunities to move him before and they haven't. And I feel like they're just going to stick it out. But this is going to cost them a lot of money because that franchise tag is not cheap.
No.
You're in the process of signing or extending Jamar Chase, unless they're dumb and don't. But I mean, the way they've been working is just all in on that pass game. And again, when you accompany T. Higgins with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, your offense is scary regardless. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that, and this last year proved it, there's a lot of things that they need to fix. And I think keeping T. Higgins is going to hinder that a lot.
Yeah. I think it was time that they needed to move on from him, but they've been dragging that.
Yeah, I think he probably will stay, but I think he should move.
He needs to get out of there. Respectfully, of course.
So, yeah, that one's a little bit interesting. There's been like slight mumblings of like Kyle Pitts being moved.
I haven't heard much about that.
I saw one thing about him being traded to the Chiefs, which I was just like interesting. There was slight rumblings of Tyreek Hill being moved.
Yeah, especially with how he responded towards the end of the season.
There's the thing at the end of the season, but he's also come back and said that he doesn't mean that, so I think he probably will stay. But legitimate, actual trade rumors, Jair Alexander, again, they're not moving him right now. No. It will be a little bit further down the road, but it's another one where do they move him, and if so, where? I think the one I've seen the most, and I wouldn't hate it, would be to the Ravens. It would help them shore up that secondary, pair him across from Marlon Humphrey.
Yeah.
It could be a pretty good move, I think, for both teams. I've seen valuing of like a 3rd-round pick. And I wouldn't be mad at Jair for a 3rd-round pick if he can play up to that. But like that level that he's been able to. But obviously there's the concern, which is what keeps him from being more valued than a 3rd. So curious what you think and like maybe other locations or if they even move him at all.
Well, this one's hard, mostly because of how Jair Alexander has been doing lately, especially with all the injuries and I don't want to play this person or whatever it is, because there's been the rumors of like him not actually wanting to play certain teams because he doesn't want to be exposed, I guess. There's been a few of those rumblings. But with how many games he's missed recently, I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers did let him go. To where is the next thing? Because I can see the Ravens, but there's also a few other teams that need what Jair Alexander can do. I'm not entirely sure which teams, though, that are like the forerunner. I think the Ravens are definitely the forerunners of that one, front runners. I do think there's a couple other teams, but they're kind of like in the background, like we're here just in case kind of thing. To where
I feel like a team that makes a lot of sense that I haven't seen someone talk about might be like the Raiders.
I can see the Raiders. I don't know. Who needs secondary help?
The Packers.
Well, obviously the Packers, but they're going to have to move on from him eventually because he's not done a whole lot. Like, he's good.
He has issues also staying on the field sometimes, and he has points where he does get burned, but he's also, like, at times he's a really, like, one of the best corners. Other times he's just doesn't look too great.
No, he also talks a lot too, so he's a locker room issue as well.
Yeah,
it's maybe not a locker room issue, but more of a public perception issue, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, the ones I can think of off the top of my head that probably don't really need him, but be really good if they did get him, would be like Commanders, Bengals, or Patriots might snag him. 49ers is a big maybe, though.
Ooh, that would be so blasphemous, though.
That would be blasphemous, but it's there.
Yeah, it's an
there.
Option. It is an option, and I think especially because the 49ers had to or decided to move on from Travis Ward.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could definitely make a move for him. I don't think the Bengals will.
No,
it's just
it's
not
one of those
the way they go.
It's one of those teams where it's like, kind of need him, but do you think they'll actually do that kind of thing?
No. I like team again. There's a difference between teams that could use him and teams that I think will actually trade for him. Because like the Colts, I think they could use him. Because
the Colts. I completely forgot about them. They're a mess. They need something on that defense.
The Colts, the Jaguars. There's like a lot of teams that
Jaguars.
could. I think
depends on what the draft does, I guess.
Yeah, I think the Colts are kind of that mid-tier team that could try and make a move for him, but I don't think they will.
No,
but
it's definitely there.
That's
why I said the Ravens are the front runners for that one.
Yeah, Ravens. I feel like I'm trying to feel out how they do these off seasons because it seems like they don't do a lot. Like last year, it didn't seem like they did a lot, and then it was boom, Derrick Henry, and I was like, well, okay, so
I guess now you want to do something.
Maybe it's like a trade for Jai Alexander, and then we sink to the shadows.
Probably.
And like
again, what we wanted.
I wouldn't be too mad at it.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Other than that, I can't really think of any possible like big trades, like big possible trades. I don't know. There's not a name that's really like popping out to me right now. Unless
are you talking like
one now?
Players for rumors or like for Jair Alexander?
Players for rumors, because I know Jair Alexander could possibly just be traded to like, I don't know, Ravens. Niners would be quite the story, but
there's some interesting teams. But no, I can't think of like anyone off the top of my head. But this is what makes things so interesting. Is like some of these guys DK Metcalf, we expected to be traded.
Yeah,
But like Gino, we had a feel. There were some people who said it, maybe partially because of like Pete Carroll being there and stuff. But there's these people that we like expect to be traded, and then there's the ones we don't expect. Like Laramie Tunsil, I thought he would retire a Texan, and
here we are.
And he got traded to the Commanders, which is just like
why? Why?
And then there's like obviously what the Bears have been doing, but it's some players you expect to just stay and they don't, and some players you expect to leave and they also don't. So it's hard to predict stuff. But that actually was going to be what I was going to ask, is if you had any other ones in mind. But
yeah, there's nothing major that I can think of at the top of my head. There hasn't been like a big trade unless the internet wants to tell me about that right
unless
now.
Something else has happened. But if I were to guess, I don't think anything huge has happened yet.
Nothing too crazy. A lot of this is free agent stuff. So, I don't know.
So, before we wrap up, I want you to pick your favorite trade. Which team was the biggest? Pick your biggest winner, your biggest loser, and then pick your favorite trade and grade each side.
That's a tough one. I'd say the biggest winner right now are the Steelers.
Interesting for the DK Metcalf.
Metcalf right now. They've also been making moves in free agency, which we'll get to that at one point. But yeah, I'd say the Steelers definitely have probably the best trade as of right now. We'll look back onto that sometime next year. Loser, I'd say. Probably the Texans right now. Like, why would you trade away Tunsil?
Yeah, I'm honestly I was expecting you to say the Seahawks, but honestly, I kind of agree with the Texans and Tunsil as like.
Why would you get rid of the one piece that you need to help lay the foundation for that O-line?
He is potentially a top 5 tackle on a team that is struggling with O-line, and O-line is not easy to come by.
No.
And so now it's such an interesting move, and I get they got picks, but that team is so talented around that, and I think O-line was the last thing they needed, and then they make this move. So I think I agree. I think my loser is also gonna be the Texans. But yeah, favorite trade.
Because what do we have right now? We have Metcalf, Geno, Tunsil. Who else did we talk about?
The 2 O-linemen for the Bears.
Bear O-lineman.
Christian Kirk was like the small one, and then there was the Godshot trade. So not too many.
No.
At the moment.
I'd say probably my favorite is what the Bears are doing right now. Not just because of the fact that they're finally doing it, and they're actually solid pieces for once. They're not just like, we're putting these people there. Go defend Caleb Williams. Defend Caleb Williams. They're actually doing something for once. And my dad's a Bears fan, and that's why I'm like, you know what? Maybe the Bears won't be as bad as they were last season at a 4-13 record. We'll see. But yeah, those would probably be best, worst, and favorite. What was the other one you said?
Oh, and pick your favorite trade and grade each side.
Bears, I'd say probably about a B plus.
Okay.
From both of them combined, especially with those 2 O-linemen.
Mm-hmm.
Because what was it? Chiefs, I'd probably say low C, probably, because you do need protection from Mahomes, and you're not going to get a lot out of that, especially with how the Eagles tore through that line during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was honestly, I think that's an under. Because we mostly just talked about the Bears and didn't acknowledge the fact that
the Chiefs were losing their O-line.
An O-lineman after getting destroyed by
the
we haven't even talked about that. Yeah, that was very key point. And then there's the Rams trading Jonah Jackson.
That one, mid C plus maybe, if you really want to be generous. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not good. Or at least for that side, but Bears definitely at least a solid B or B plus. Like, it was pretty good. Good decisions.
Yeah,
they needed them. So.
For my picks, biggest winners. I mean, honestly, I am tempted to say the Bears. I just really like the O-lineman moves. Maybe I'm throwing in a little bit of what they've done in free agency as well, but
yeah, I think they've been doing a bit.
I think O-lineman's pretty good. You get it for some pretty good prices. Biggest losers, I actually am going to retract my statement of the Texans because they managed to get Christian Kirk for a next year's 7th, literally nothing.
That's fair, I guess.
So it's a little bit. I really don't like the trade for them. I think if I were a Texans fan, not good. Those picks are going to be nice, but what are you going to do with them? You're going to pick more linemen?
Probably. Knowing them.
I mean, you only have anyways.
Knowing them.
Yeah, but again, I won't even say that they're the biggest losers because you got Christian Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
I think, honestly, my biggest loser might be the Chiefs for giving up Joe Thuney and, losing other pieces.
You're welcome.
So then, my favorite trade, I think I'm going to have to go with probably the Debo trade because it's the 49ers moving on from him.
Yeah.
And it's not great. You're only getting a fifth for the 49ers, C plus, B minus. It's nothing like great. You're giving up a player but he hasn't been performing well. You got something for him.
Yes.
And for the Commanders, again, it's a fifth, but worst case scenario, you gave up a fifth for someone who doesn't do anything.
Exactly.
Best case scenario, you get some of the best out of him, and you pair him with Terry McLaurin. I think it's a pretty good move. Actually, no, I take it back. I think Commanders are the biggest winners. But yeah, I think that might be my favorite trade, and I might give A minus to B plus for the Commanders on the Debo trade.
Okay.
But yeah, like I think it could potentially be a win both ways. Unfortunate for the 49ers, but as far as like trade goes, this is like the one time where there's like all this trade news. I think going forward, most likely it's going to kind of be lumped into just a generic update, but I feel like it deserved its own video.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're here.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't, unless you have any other trade rumors, which it doesn't seem that we do.
No.
That's like all I got on trades.
Yeah, there's not been a whole lot of like major trades if there has been anything recently, but
it's kind of just been like bigger moves, not like a lot of moves.
yeah, and they're also mostly to free agency, I've noticed.
Yeah, there's
a lot more free agency this year. There's not been a lot of trades.
Yeah, it's mostly just been the names, and they're kind of revolving around 3 teams. So it's Seahawks, Commanders, and Bears are kind of the 3 dominating the trades right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I still think it's interesting. There've been some interesting moves. Again, like we mentioned, not a lot, but Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Geno Smith, and Laramie Tunsil. That's a pretty big 4 people to move. Yeah. And there's still some rumors out there too coming up, and we'll try and keep up to date going forward as to if anything happens with these guys. But other than that, I think that is about all we have for this video.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot going on right now. A lot of free agency stuff. That's the stuff I'm really excited about.
That'll be out. We'll be out soon. Or already out. Who knows? I have no idea what order these are going to come out. But unless
we got one trade that just happened.
All right, breaking news apparently for us as of right now.
As of 4:34 Central Standard Time. QB for QB trade. Kenny Pickett to hit Cleveland.
4?
So Cleveland Browns needed a quarterback. Got Kenny Pickett from the Eagles. Jonathan Jones. Pickett will be going to Eagles with Dorian Thompson Robinson.
So they trade Thompson Robinson for Kenny Pickett.
For a 25th fifth round pick from Cleveland. And a 2025 fifth round pick.
The Eagles got the 2025 fifth. So Eagles get DTR and a fifth for Kenny Pickett, who, interesting. Listen, Kenny Pickett, potentially a pretty serviceable backup.
Not somebody you start.
But, like, DTR also has potential upside. And you get a fit.
Well,
new biggest losers, the Cleveland Browns.
I don't know what the Browns are doing, bro.
I don't know. That's such an interesting move. But, yeah, we got a little bit of breaking news on that.
Yeah,
breaking news right now.
That just happened.
Breaking news for us. This will be like
old news for you guys.
This will be like a couple hours or whatever. But yeah. Well,
there you go.
Mind boggled that just happened.
You're welcome. Got some news.
But yeah, I think now we're good to wrap up.
Yeah, so now we're good to wrap up.
All right. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope to get a little bit more consistent and back into things. He's just vibing over there.
I'm back, man.
And yeah, we're so ready for all of stuff to pick up. Obviously, it has been slow while things have not really been able to happen. But now everything's able to happen, and we're going to have draft in a little over a month.
I think that we heard a knock on the door. We opened the door, and a flood came in. That's kind of how all this news is happening right now. So we're kind of getting on top of it. So I mean,
it was the quiet before the storm.
Yes, it quite literally was.
So we appreciate you all being here, and we look forward to seeing you in our free agency update.
See ya.
Bye.